Good evening. Welcome to a Be Informed session. My name is Carl Buhariwala and I founded Be Informed to help people make good decisions. Today's session will cover business operations, and we have Robert Bonifacio of Robert Bonifacio Coaching to go through 5 tips to boost your productivity and effectiveness. Today's session is being recorded and will be made available to anyone to view on our YouTube channel following the session. I also want to acknowledge the traditional owners on the lands on which we are meeting today and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. This session is being recorded in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, and is being conducted in Melbourne, Australia, and is being prepared in relation to sort of the views and information in relation to Australia. So in relation to any information that you do receive today, please do bear in mind that if you do want to rely on it in a future point in time, that you should consider whether it's appropriate for you at that point. So always make sure that you consider whether any information shared with you today is relevant to you in a future point in time. The information is current as of this month, so all of this information that's being shared today is not sort of specifically professional advice in nature. It should be, we do want to remind you that it's based at a particular point in time, and if your circumstances change in the future, that you should reconsider whether it's appropriate for you at that time, and always recommend that you should consult a professional to help you apply any information that you have received today. In terms of housekeeping matters, the session is being recorded. There's an opportunity after today's seminar to go through Q&A, so Robert will kindly answer your questions if you do have any. And if you do want to ask any questions, please do post them in the chat function to me, and then I will then relay them directly through to Robert for answering. And following the session, there'll be a 1-page handout, which will be emailed through to registered participants so that you have something tangible to rely on in the future. And you can also share that with your friends and family if need be. So, today's session's on business operations. I'll now hand over to Robert to take us through the seminar.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity, Carl. Let me share, as Carl said, 5 key principles over the next 25 minutes that's going to help your productivity and effectiveness. Just a bit of background. I've been coaching and mentoring and working with businesses really since about 1986, and really more formally since 2017. Back in 86, I was part of the financial services industry for about 30 years. Now, what I know and what I've learned is that time is one of our, if not our most important commodity, probably next to air and breathing, I think, really. So I've been studying it, how to use it better and more effectively, so we can control our lives a little bit better, because once time is gone, it's gone. So what's the impact of that for most people once it's gone? And we don't potentially pay enough attention. I know for most of us, what it really boils down to, it's not really a time problem. What I've found is probably more a priority problem. So the issue is often about getting things done or not getting them done. So getting things done and how we use our time or using the time that we have requires a little bit of self-discipline, or at least a plan and some greater awareness, and mixed in with that is a dose of desire to want to use it better. So what I also know is that there's a link between our personal traits and our business effectiveness when it comes to time. So using the principles I'll share with you will cross over to both your personal life and your business life. So let me give you an example. If your business is well systematized and has effective processes and uses state-of-the-art technology and is highly productive, however, as an individual working within a business, you're disorganized and frustrated, then that's going to have a severe impact on your productivity. So productivity is how you do what you do, and effectiveness is focusing on the right things. And Jim Rohn, most of you hopefully would have heard of Jim Rohn, who has said you either run your day or your day runs you. So think about this as we go through the 5 key principles. It's the 1%ers, or the small things, we implement, that will have a substantial impact and will have a cumulative effect that will make the difference on how we use our time. It may not be one thing. There may be several things you need to do to see the benefits of that. So we need to think about how we can make the principles sustainable in our life and in our business. Now, you may have heard the saying, practice makes perfect. Well, actually, practice doesn't necessarily make perfect if you're practicing the right things, fantastic. If you're practicing the wrong things, then you're just going to get good at doing the wrong things. So you'll hear me use the term, it's about rinse, repeat, review, and adjust. And what I know is action and focus and consistency will produce momentum, and that will provide you with greater motivation. So productivity and effectiveness is about it's not about doing more with the time that you have. It's about achieving more of the right things. So don't aim necessarily to be busy, aim to be productive. And I've learned that successful people are prepared to do what unsuccessful people are not prepared to do in a lot of cases, not always. So sometimes that means things might be a little uncomfortable for a while, but if you want to have what others can't, you sometimes have to do what others won't do. So the key to productivity is to do less while focusing more on the right things. So don't try and do everything. Don't do effectively what you shouldn't be doing at all. Can I suggest your challenge today through the next 20 odd minutes is to find one or two things that you can work on that will have an impact and then try something else rather than trying to do anything. So you have to decide to do things differently to experience some different results. What are those things going to be for you? Now, a bad example or an example, more realistically, is I had a client recently who said, I'm not doing exercise, I'm going to exercise every day. The outcome was that I said to them, you actually need to try and exercise twice a week. Let's see if we can do twice a week for this week before we can move to the next level. They said, no, I'm going to do it every day. Well, it actually didn't work because they tried to make too much of a change. Anyway, so let me go through the first slide, please, Carl. And the first principle I want to go through is about having clear objectives. And I call this area planning goals anew. The goals and vision of what you want become your guiding light. That clarity is your power, and that focus can contribute to your decision making. I like to use the analogy, it's like creating a clear picture on your jigsaw puzzle box that is your life. We have all the pieces inside, but if we don't have a clear picture of what we want it to look like, it's very difficult to put those pieces together. So having a clear goals and vision is really, really important. Being productive and effective comes down sometimes to making the right decisions. Now, those decisions start with the big picture. Now, let's call it might be a 3-year plan, it might be for your life or your business or whatever aspect of life or multiple aspects of life. So we have a bigger picture, we break it down into what it needs to look like in 12 months, and we're going to talk about how we focus on that in what I call 90-day chunks. There's 4 quarters in a year, so 4 times a year. We're going to break down into what we look like. What does the picture break down into? But you don't need to review it on a regular basis. We don't need to look at the big picture every day. What we need to look at is what we need to focus on every 90 days, in my opinion. And what's really important about that is many of you may have heard the acronym about having SMART goals. And I think the important thing, they're all important: specific, measurable, attainable, relative, and timely. So I'm going to say to you, you need to be clear what your purpose is, which is your mission and your vision, be it personal or business life, and why you're doing things and what your values are that guide you. But most importantly, I think it's one of the most important things. What are the time frames you're putting around things that you need to do? That's why I talk about 90-day goal. It becomes your action plan. So clarity is about the big picture, what your puzzle box picture looks like. And then we need to break it down into 90-day chunks. It's not about doing things that are not relevant to your action plan. It includes working on you and your business and projects. So one of the things I have there are high payoff activities, okay, HPA. I think high payoff activities, we need to understand where our time should be spent. What are the things that we should do that give us the highest payoff on our time? Okay. Some may have heard the term big rocks. Stephen Covey used the term big rocks. What are the big rocks in your life? The high payoff activities that you know this gives you the best return on your time. And conversely, what you should also know is, where shouldn't I be allocating my time? What are the things I shouldn't be doing? And these are key drivers. Your high payoff activities are the key drivers to start to manage your time. They become part of your process and system. To work on your business as well, one of your high payoff activities, if you're a business owner, is project work. Project work is a category, is a high payoff activity. If you're running a business and you're not working on projects, then you're missing the development of your business. So that might be refining a process or updating a checklist or creating something new. The other thing that's really important about high payoff activities, there'll be things that you should not be spending your time on. And I'll talk about delegating later on. Delegating to someone internally, or if you don't employ people, what could you outsource? And then the next part of that is your KPIs, your key performance indicators. What are you measuring in your business? What are the metrics you need to be following to know that you're on track? What do you need to measure? What's important to know? Rather than having a business as usual approach, what are the things that are going to tell you how you're progressing? They're really important. And some of you may have heard the term SWOT analysis. What are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Know where you're good, know where your weaknesses are. And I'm going to change the T rather than threat. Know the trends that are happening in your industry that you might be able to take advantage of. And the final part about clear objectives is celebrating the achievements along the way. Too often we don't celebrate. Okay, can't be just a business as usual approach and not celebrate our accomplishments. Don't take them for granted. I think that's where sometimes people fall down, is not celebrating some of their big achievements over a 90-day period. So you've heard the term enjoy the journey, not the destination. And I think that is what I'm trying to say here. The celebration is the stepping stones that you celebrate in achieving the destination you want to get to. And the reality is sometimes you may not even get to the final destination because you keep changing it because it's not a tattoo. So make sure we're celebrating those wins. So this area is all about know what your clear picture of what the box looks like, the picture on the box of your life, because that's going to help you to make decisions. So let's move to the next slide. And this category or this second key principle is about prioritizing. Now, planning is a great investment. When you go on holidays, generally most people who go on holidays plan it. They know where they're going to go, what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. Well, I really think your business and your life needs some planning and prioritizing. We should know what the 2, 3, or 4 key goals are that we want to accomplish each day. I'm going to talk about habits later on, and I think this is an important habit to give you focus and purpose. Successful people get the important things done first. And it's what they don't do that makes the difference. So start with your big rocks. I mentioned it before. Start with the most important tasks so that you do what needs to be done that's important. And if you're not sure what's important, I have what I call a priority filter. Now, you need to have a priority filter. How do you determine what's important? And I think there are 4 or 5 key things that go into a priority filter for most people. It will be slightly different for everyone, but it's going to include things like, I need to do this because of the time I have. I need to do this because of the money that it brings in. It creates cash flow for the business. I need to do this because of the person who needs it done. It might be a superior or an important client. I need to do this because there are multiple steps. If I don't do A, I can't do B. Or I have to do this because of the time I have. I only have, pick a time frame, 10 minutes to do. So let's not start an hour task. Let me do this 10-minute task. So the big rocks is about doing or prioritizing things and then having a priority filter to help you work out what you need to do. Now, some of you may have heard of the Eisenhower matrix, and Eisenhower looks at important and urgent and not important and not urgent. And what we need to do is live in the quadrant that makes things that we do important but not urgent. If everything we do is urgent, it means we're not acting with a sense of urgency. We're letting it get the best of us rather than doing what's important. Here's a good question you may want to ask yourself. What is the best use of my time, given what the picture on my box is and what my 90-day goals are? Part of that might be learning how to delegate. And delegating is an art in itself. So don't hope for the best. We need to explain to people the outcomes that we require and let them use their creativity and genius to be able to do that. And sometimes we need to learn to say no. You can do anything when you stop trying to do everything. It's a saying, but it's true. So in relation to prioritizing, we need to improve our focus because that helps us with procrastination. And what's going to help us with procrastination is managing our distractions. Most people have a distraction of sorts. Some might call it their kryptonite. This is the thing that always distracts me. What gets in your way and how do we deal with that? And if we can deal with your distractions, let me tell you, distractions is generally one of the things that takes away a lot of time. And one of the things that other people talk about that they find might be really, a skill that they've developed is they say, oh, I can multitask. I'm really good at multitasking. Well, I think you're kidding yourself. Try not to multitask. It kills your productivity. It's a distraction. So it's not a skill, in my opinion. So, in relation to prioritizing, know the 2 or 3 or 4 things you need to do and have a priority filter that you run things through so you know a process. You have a process for going through to do things in the right order. So, do you know that busyness does not equal importance? Okay, let's move on to the next slide. And the next slide talks about time management or scheduling time. So it's really important, I believe, to physically allocate time in your diary, what I call not negotiable time, to do those 2, 3, or 4 important things that you have on your diary, on your list each day. It's essentially an appointment with yourself. I really feel most people need to see themselves as their most important client. You are your most important client. I know there are other important clients, but you're your most important. If you can manage you and what you do, then it's going to be able to allow a lot of other things to get done. And having time scheduled in your diary for tasks will help deal with your distraction because it's an appointment with you. I would imagine most people would very rarely cancel an appointment with a client if they could avoid it. And I think that's the way we need to deal with appointments with ourselves. And it's going to help with our distractions. And what I know about distractions is sometimes they're internal, things we can control, and sometimes they're external, which is created by someone else, be it employees or the phone or something else that needs to get done. So how do we start to deal with those and how do we eliminate the choices so that we can create more focus? If you can avoid distractions or minimize them, this is going to save you a lot of time and it's going to get things done a little quicker. Getting things done is the time, in a time allocated, falls under the term Parkinson's law. So this is where people say, oh, I normally work better under pressure when I've got to, I know I need to get it done tomorrow. If I wait till the last minute, I'll get it done. My view is it's actually the fact that there's a time frame that is linked to that particular task that gives the person the focus to get it done. So if you can learn to give yourself time frames to get things done, it's going to help. Break tasks down, get them started, use your filter, and remember action. Action, action, action reduces procrastination. Do you know what your most productive time of day is? We all have a time of day where we're the most productive, and we have a time of day when we're at our least productive. Find your most productive and make it sacred to your most important work. And I was saying to Carl just before the meeting, do you know your most productive day of the week is Tuesday followed by Wednesday, and your least productive is Friday? So make your Tuesday and Wednesday sacred for your most important work and your most productive time of day when you get the most important things done, okay, your heavy tasks. Now, for most people, it's in the morning, but not for everyone. I know when I get to 3 o'clock, between 3 and 4, I'm not necessarily at my best. So let me do things that don't require the best of me at that time. So in relation to scheduling time, know your most productive time of day. And know the processes or things you need to avoid during that time so you can focus on things. And one of the other things is tasks. I see too many people leaving things that need to be done with what I call open loops, with no set time frame. How many times have you sent an email that's come to you and says, can you answer this question? And you don't know whether you need to do it today, tomorrow, or the day after. So you don't know, and the person who sent it doesn't know when you're going to reply. That to me is an open loop. It leaves things open to interpretation. If you want a tip about how, one of the things that you can do to make you more productive and effective and help people understand what you're thinking, is put timeframes on everything and avoid those open loops. People think that they're working better under pressure, as I said, but it's not true. And getting things out of your head, okay, will also help you to reduce overwhelm. One of the things that people do is have too much in their head. I know what I need to do, it's in my head, but getting it out of your head so you can use your mind for creativity rather than thinking through, have I missed something, is something you should do. Now, should it be on paper? Should it be electronic? How should it be? I don't know what's right for you. I had a client yesterday who said what worked for them was they've got everything out of their head and they put it on butcher paper on the wall. And then from there, they created their 90-day goals. If that works for them, fine. It doesn't matter. It's what works for you. It might even be a whiteboard. I don't mind what it is, but get it out of your head into something that leaves your mind clear. I use a program called ClickUp, which is an online management tool that I use. Now, remember, here's a tip in relation to time management that I think is really important, is a lack of planning by another person does not necessarily make it urgent on my part. And we need to teach people that just because they're running late doesn't mean I have to jump at their beck and call. There will be times when you need to, but it shouldn't be your go-to position. So learn to manage that. Learn to manage your distractions, internal and external. Know what gets in your way. And scheduling time is about making time in your diary for your most important tasks and keeping an appointment with yourself. I move on to the next slide, which is about habits and routines. I'm just checking my time here. I am on track. We have habits and routines, or we should have habits and routines to reduce our need to constantly make decisions. And if we can reduce, that's going to help us to stay on track. Essentially, our habits and routines are similar to the fact that businesses operate more effectively when they have processes and systems in place that drives what they do. Our habits and routines become our processes and systems. They're the things that keep us on track. They'll give you better structure to your day, to your week, and your month. And they'll make your life easy because you might say, I just always do that. What is it? Might be I mow the lawns on Sunday, or I always review my week on a Friday, or I always start my day with knowing what my 3 priorities are for the day. They help you to control your attention and reduce your distractions. So a good tip is when you review your day or your week or your month, whatever you do, here's 3 questions you should ask yourself when you review things. What did I do well? What did I learn? And what could I do better next time or tomorrow? It's going to help you to find those refinements. And sometimes we have habits that don't serve us, because the idea is to have habits that serve us, but sometimes we have habits that don't serve us. So my suggestion would be, rather than to try and stop a habit, try and replace it. A couple of examples might be, personal habits might be, instead of having a glass of wine as soon as you get home, if that's what you do, perhaps have a glass of mineral water or something else, an alcohol-free option. Or instead of having a biscuit with your morning tea, perhaps have a carrot or something similar. The other one might be, a lot of people check their phone in the morning when they wake up to see what the time is. Well, perhaps have a clock so your phone doesn't become a distraction, so you don't just check the time and check all your notifications. So what's not serving you that you could replace? Now, morning habits, it might be identifying your priorities for the day. It might be exercise. It might be family time, self-time, partner time. What are the habits you need to build into your day in the morning or in the evening? Might be you review your day. It might be stop screen time an hour before bed, or no phone during dinner time. No one has a phone at the table. Or you finish work at 5 o'clock every day, or you leave work at 4 o'clock on a Friday. What are the things you want or you need to do all the time? You know, some people do their accounts on a particular day, or one of the things that starts my day, I sit down at my office with a cup of coffee and I look at a morning motivational video that starts my day. That's my morning routine. So might be having a break between tasks, or have a quick walk, or get some fresh air, or stand up? What are the things that you want to do that are going to help you build a routine or a process and system about what you do? Remember, what gets measured gets done. So make tracking and reviewing what you do and what you don't do, make that a habit, and then make part of that habit the adjustment that you need to do. One of the things that I do if I go to a seminar or a workshop, I always try and find what's the one thing I want to take from that seminar and apply it. So habits and routines will make your life easier. What can you do? Just remember, if you get it right 80% of the time, I think you're on track. It's not always going to be perfect. Life's not perfect, but if we aim to get it right most of the time, it's going to be helpful. Just think about rinse, repeat, review, and adjust. Okay, let's move on to the final principle, which is about having an empowered mindset. I would call that having a positive mindset to maximize your performance. Now, it starts with physiology, which is your body. How do you stand? How do you talk? What are your facial expressions? How do you want to breathe? How do you focus? What meaning do you give things? What beliefs about a situation do you have? We need awareness about what's serving us, what we need to change, and what's working for us. You know, what beliefs serve you? What might need to change? What attitudes do I need to have? Do you see the glass half full, or do you see it half empty? And does it make a difference? My thinking is that seeing it half full is better than seeing it half empty, because that's what serves me. Okay. What language should you use, and what things do you say that you shouldn't use because it doesn't serve you? Just little things like language can make a big difference. What do you need to stop saying? What do you need to start saying? What character traits do you need to have as an individual that all help to build you up? How do you stand? How do you want to be known? Are you the sort of person that's always on time or always just 2 minutes late for an appointment? Is that what you want to be known for? What lens do you look at things through? What perspective? As I said, is it a half glass full or a glass half empty? What serves you? You've got to look after yourself. So empowering a mind also includes, do you know how many hours sleep you need to get each night? And what do you do to make that happen? Do you know how much water you should drink every day? Do you know what food serves you and what doesn't serve you? Do you need to make some changes around your exercise routine or your breathing? Should meditation be something you need to incorporate into what you do? Do you provide enough gratitude for what you have? Take a lot of things for granted. I think gratitude sometimes for the things that we have are just small reminders. 3 things. What are the 3 things each day that you are grateful for? Sometimes it can be really simple. Sometimes I'm just grateful that I go to the fridge and there's food in there. What else helps you? Is it sex? Is it time with your partner? Is it family time? Should you be looking at the evening news? I know through COVID, I stopped looking at the evening news because it was driving me crazy, was not serving me. Be careful what you let in. Are you doing what you love? Because if you do what you love, that will give you energy. What is it you should be doing more of? Is it, what else do you need? Do you accept responsibility, or are you always looking to blame someone else because it's their problem? Our mind is so important, and we need to learn to protect it. There's so many pieces of that puzzle. So there you have the 5 principles: clear goals, prioritizing, scheduling time, having great habits and routines, and having an empowered mindset. So from here, what I'd like you to think about is decide what you need to start doing. Decide what you need to stop doing. Bit of a brainstorm, and think about what do you need to do less of, or what you need to do more of, and acknowledge that knowledge is not the gap. We all have access to so much knowledge out there. Now the gap is about self-management, and the things I've tried to give you here are all things that we can self-manage. But to do that, we need some self-awareness. It comes down to us, really. So aim to be effective with what you do, not efficient, and learn, if there's a message, is learn to respect yourself and your own time, and get a better balance between the two, and ask yourself, what is the best use of my time? Not what do I want to do? Think about what the big picture on the puzzle box of your life needs to look like in 3 years, 12 months, and then focus on the next 90 days. And remember, nothing changes if nothing changes. Will we get it right all the time? I said, no. Remember, we're going to rinse, repeat, review, and adjust. 80% of the time, if we get it right 80% of the time, that's better than 50% of the time. So there's lots of things that we can do. I hope that's been of some value and you've got something out of it. And I'm be delighted to answer any questions that you might have. And because I think that's my time. If I look at my timer here, it tells me 28 minutes. So sorry, I went 3 minutes over, Carl. Back to you.
Beautiful, mate. Thank you for that. That was very comprehensive. So hoping all those that have attended and heard that will definitely take something away from all those tips. And I think we can all reflect on the fact that while the tips seem so obvious to you, I mean, we can often overlook the importance of just remembering to implement them. So time management, sometimes the day gets ahead of us and we lose track of time. And by the time you get to the end of the day, you think, crap, I haven't done a few tasks that I wanted to complete, because you might have spent a bit more time on a particular task that you could have been a bit more efficient in how you tackled it. So I definitely think there's always something to take away from these sessions on improving your productivity and effectiveness, because no one is ever perfect and we've all got areas where we can improve. So that's, thanks, Robert. And his details are up on the screen. So if you have any further questions, just reach out directly to him and you can take it from there. So what we'll do now is we'll move on to Q&A. And just as a reminder, if you have any questions, please do send them through to me in the chat function and I will relay them to Robert. This session is also being recorded, so you can always refer to it back in the future online at your convenience. And of course, there will be a one-page handout shared with registered participants. So I hope you're not taking copious amounts of notes. Because most of it is captured in Robert's one-page handout.
So and as I said, Carl, I just think, I hope really, my hope and desire is that those who attended can find one or two things that they could test and try tomorrow for them. I would encourage you not to try and make hundreds of changes, because it's not sustainable. We want to do things that are sustainable. So what are the one or two things you might be able to do tomorrow to set your day up, to set the rest of the week up to be a little more productive than it was today? And, think about the review, rinse, repeat, review, and adjust. What are the things that you can learn from yesterday that you can make better tomorrow? It's about the small adjustments. I was talking to a client this morning I've been working with for a while, and we reviewed the journey we have taken over the last 2 years. And where they are today is poles apart from where they were. And I just want to make sure we remind people about the small adjustments that are made that over time cumulatively make a big difference. And a lot of people don't necessarily reflect on that. And I think it's important to do that.
Oh, yeah. And the power of reflection is important, right? That's the way to grow. If you can, test what you've done in the past and be able to sort of scrutinize it and see the benefits and positives.
Yeah.
And also the negatives too. Then you can make adjustments and small adjustments.
Learn from those. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll go through the questions that we received by email to start off with, then we'll kick into the questions that we get into the chat. So I'll give people a bit more time to think of their questions. So one of the first questions that we've got is around scheduling their diary, scheduling a diary. So maybe it comes to time management. What tips can you share when you've got an executive assistant, or you might have a secretary or someone within your business scheduling your diary for meetings? What are some ways? Do you have any tips to help that person sort of better manage their diaries? It's not overwhelmingly filled with too many meetings and they can't get any work done. Like what tips do you have to deal with that when some people just have to get through all the meetings?
Yeah, well, I think it starts with making them aware of what you want your diary to look like. If you don't want back-to-back meetings, I think you need to, if you can control it, have that conversation. If there are things that you don't want at a certain time and they can control that, do it. Now, look, sometimes someone's going to schedule back-to-back meetings, but if you can control your diary, I, as an example, control my own diary. don't want to have back-to-back coaching sessions with clients. I always like to leave at least half an hour between sessions, because you come off a session and you want to reflect, and then you want to prepare for the next one. And you need a break sometimes. So I think it comes back to having a conversation with them is how you want your diary to look. It will take time, but I think that open communication is where I would start.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's important. Yeah, speak to the person that's managing your diary. If it's not
Yeah,
you, then have a chat and put
yeah.
the necessary controls in place. There was actually something when someone shared with me early in the week, a little tip, a little hack you can do in Microsoft Outlook, which is when you're setting meetings in Outlook, if you go to the settings function through you click on File and go to Settings, and then you go to Calendar, I think is the sub menu. You can actually automatically ensure that every meeting that you set for 30 minutes always ends earlier by 5 minutes at the end, or you can change it to 10 minutes, or so at least that way you get a few extra minutes in your day to sort of prepare for the next meeting, rather than just sort of logging off on that call and jumping onto the next call and not knowing which frame of mind you need to be in. So there's so many little tips and tricks you can use to get a few more minutes back in your day, so you can go to the bathroom or have a drink, or just change your mind to the next, turn your mind to the next topic.
It's setting that standard. And if someone's managing your diary, let them know what you're thinking. They're not necessarily mind readers. They're thinking, I'm going to fill the diary because that's the brief they got from somewhere. But if the answer is, I don't want back-to-back meetings, and you can control that, what are the controllables here? They're the things I'm looking for. What are the controllables? And it might be, you know, most productive time of day for me is between 9:30 and 11:30. Okay, let me do my most important work there. I don't want anything to interrupt that time. Okay, so it might be saying to people, I don't want any external appointments at this time on a Wednesday.
Yeah,
So
just
put
blocking time out. Yeah,
block a time. It says this time on a Wednesday is free because I always do ABC, whatever that is. So yeah, just have a conversation. I would go with a conversation with the person to say, here are some parameters. Let's work together to make sure it happens for me, because it's going to make me more productive.
that's right. Yep. The next question we've got is around the what I and I'm not really saying the questions verbatim. Of course, so we've got the prioritize element and the habit and routine element, right? So this person's asking, well, always he gets, or he or they're always getting um, requests that are urgent. Yeah,
Yeah.
so a lot of urgent tasks.
Yes.
It seems like this person has the habit of responding to all tasks urgently at the same time, right? Like, if you get all the urgent tasks, you just want to get them out of the way. So what can this person do to deal with that when everything comes to him or they as urgent,
Yes.
and they need to sort of figure out in that little bundle of urgent tasks
Yes.
which ones are then even more urgent than those on the list urgent?
Well, I think it comes down to the filter. Now, let's
Mm,
go through this a little bit of detail. Sometimes something is urgent, and I do some work with a legal firm where there are settlements on conveyancing, and it's done at a certain time. So we're locked into that time. So we need to be conscious that that is something that can't be fixed. But if you've got a colleague or someone else that comes to you and says, "Oh, look, I really need this by what's the time now? In 20 minutes," okay, because that's what they need, then sometimes we have to bite the bullet and say, I would love to help you. I would love to help you. But unfortunately, I'm working on this project. I am not going to be able to get that to you until for 2 hours. Oh, but that doesn't work. I know. You should have come to me earlier. We could have worked through that. Unfortunately, I've got something that's more of a priority. So it's
mm,
about setting different expectations sometimes of what the task is. Now, if you've got, as I said, if you've got a settlement that's coming up that needs to be done by a certain time, that's a time constraint. So you need to work through your filter. Okay. So what are the filter elements that I spoke about? Time is one. The settlement's at 11 o'clock. I've got to get this done. Or, cash flow is really important. This one's going to bring me money. I need to get that done. Or the person who's asked for it is a boss or a superior or a really important client. I need to get that done. Okay. Or there are multiple steps. If I don't do this now, it's going to stop me from moving on with this later on.
yeah,
Okay, so what are the filters you need to run through your mind? Okay, and as I said before, because someone else hasn't managed their time, you have to teach them that because they haven't managed their time, I'm not going to jump at your beck and call in the nicest possible way. So it's managing their expectations and using your filter to work through that. I know Sometimes everything just needs to be done yesterday. I get it. But how do we start to teach people that we're not always going to jump? Sometimes we have to be a bit selective about that.
Mm.
Okay. And it's going to potentially take time for them to understand that I'm not always going to jump. Sometimes we have to let the house burn down to let them know that they need to get better organized as well. Now we have to be very careful about that, but that's potentially a strategy you could use. But setting
Yeah.
different expectations, just because they have an expectation, doesn't necessarily necessarily fit in with mine. So once again, it goes back to communication and how you react. If you treat everything that they give you as absolutely urgent because that's what they said, and you have some discretion, then sometimes we have to make that adjustment as well, in my opinion. But I'm
That's right.
happy to take that offline and look at specifics. It's really difficult to
Yeah, no,
answer
please
that
engage
without
as well. But
specifics.
yeah, no, definitely, because I think it's about being honest as well. It's,
Yeah.
if you get a request for that something's urgent, actually ask the person, why is it urgent? You get some more information, right? So that at least you can then also make an informed decision, I guess,
Yeah.
around where it sits on the ladder of tasks
Correct.
you need to complete. So no, that's very wise advice. The next one that we've got is just around, I think this probably links into the bundling into the objectives, clear objectives one, tip that you raised at the start. So this person is talking about, well, there's so many things that they need to sort of do, and this is more around. I assume this person is running a business, and they've asked that when they've got all the, like, they've got the client work to do, they've got the business development to do, they've got all these tasks they need to achieve. As assuming they're a principal of the firm, and running it at the top. How can they better set clear objectives? How can they better set their objectives when they've got so many things they need to do? They need to then, set times around, well, planning their goals, looking at their strategy, looking at their cash flow, managing their team, all the rest of it. There's so many things to do. Sometimes time can get away. What sort of frameworks do you rely on, or could you suggest that could help this person better prioritize their objectives, I guess, and what things they want to tick off?
There's a couple of things I would look at here. Firstly, it's knowing, and it's once again difficult to answer knowing how many people are in the business. If it's a one person business and everything's on you, is different. It's going to be a different answer if you've got some people that you can call on. But the place I would start is understanding your high payoff activities. What are the things, let's call them the big rocks, the big
Mm.
things that you do that make the business tick? Now, depending on the business, it'll be sales, it might be sales focused, there might be some marketing in there. Okay, there's going to, it could be a whole host of things. What are the things that give you high payoff? Face to face with clients, making a sale or completing a transaction is a high payoff activity. So, knowing what they are and knowing what you're doing that is not a high payoff activity that needs to be done would be part of that equation. It's not the best use of my time, and I may need to delegate it internally or externally, may need to outsource that. So I would look at the high payoff activities as a start. Okay. And then the other thing that's really important with that is I spoke about one of the high payoff activities in my mind that everyone who runs or owns a business should be working on are business projects. The project itself, projects are high payoff activities, business development things. Okay. Training might be organizing training, it might be changing systems and processes. It could be a whole host of things that fit into projects. Projects will all have, I need 6 hours, I need 10 hours, I need 3 days to do this. They're projects. Projects itself is a high payoff activity, and you need to allocate time to work on your projects on a regular basis. It can't be ad hoc. Now, defining regularly is really difficult because it depends on what you do and what your business is. Regularly might be once a week or once a fortnight or once a month. Depends on what you do and how much time you have. But it needs to be scheduled, because if we leave it and get it done in an ad hoc basis, the likelihood of it happening is much smaller. So we want to allocate time for our projects, okay, is another thing. So if this is a project type topic, allocate time regularly. It might be, for me, Tuesday afternoon, I allocate an hour and a half to work on projects. Now, sometimes it's not possible to get it done on a Tuesday because something else is a priority. And the key here is not to cancel, but to move the time. If I can't do it here, I have to move it to something else. Okay. Is that always possible? No, we're trying to get it right 80% of the time. Sometimes we just have to cancel our project work this week. Okay. So it's about managing and understanding your priorities. And when everything's important, it's knowing your high payoff activities, it's knowing what you can outsource and what you can delegate, and making sure that when we're working on a project, we're working with focus. So here's the other point that we need to look at. If we allocate an hour to do something, if we did it with more focus and intent, and instead of taking an hour, we did it in 55 minutes, and I can save 5 minutes an hour, then over the course of the day, I've saved myself 40 or 45 minutes potentially. Now, all those 5 minutes add up. In fact, if it's 6 minutes or 7 minutes, because I've worked with focus, then all of a sudden I've got a bit of extra time at the end of the day or the end of the week because I'm working with focus. And instead of doing it in 55 and being slack or in an hour, then this is Parkinson's law. This goes back to the conversation we had before about people saying I get things done when I'm under pressure. This is that type of topic. If I give myself an hour, I'm going to do it in an hour. If I give myself 55 minutes or 54 minutes, my guess is in a lot of cases, maybe 80% of the cases, you can get it done in the time that you allocate if you're working with focus and discipline and avoid those distractions. So there's lots of little things that you can do. There may not be one thing, it may be two or three small things that make a difference. But without knowing the specifics, that's a generalization about the sort of things that I would look at.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. Well, we'll jump to the questions that we've got in the chat now. So there's one person who's asked, they work in a services firm, and there's many steps of review that's required before something can go out. So it might be a report or a presentation or a deliverable. What steps can they implement to? I think this person's trying to say that they believe that review process is a bit cumbersome. It is protracted. How can they? What controls can they put in place? What tips do you have so that they can sort of make that process more effective as opposed to it maybe taking up too much time or a lot of repeat reviews happening? Those
I'm
sorts of
guessing it's a problem, Carl, because people delay it at their end. You do your bit and it goes to someone else, and there's a delay with that person, and then they need to do something, and then it goes to the next person, and they're delayed because it's not a priority. I'm guessing that's what the problem is. If
yeah.
it's not, I'm sorry, but that's what I sense that the challenge is here. And time frames always becomes something that is my go-to here. If you said to the person, okay, so that I can move this process along, I give you this thing, here we are now, whatever time it is. Is it possible for you to do this in the next hour? Is it possible for you to get it done by the close of business today? What's the timeline? Giving them a timeline is a starting point. Now, if this is something that happens on a regular basis, then it's wording everyone up as to why their piece of the puzzle in the chain is so important. So I think there's a bit of communication that goes on there. Timelines is important. Now, the other thing in a process is sometimes checking how efficient is the process. Is there too many steps in this process? Are we asking too much, or are we asking not enough? So sometimes looking at the process and the authority that the people have or the responsibility that they need could sometimes review the way the process is done, and it can accelerate it. So it will depend on what it is, but I think there's
Yeah.
two or three things there that you could look at to start with: timeframes, authority, and communication about when this process comes up. And it might be there's a certain day of the week that this gets done. It might be wording everyone up then. On Wednesdays, this process is going to happen for our clients. We need everyone to be on their game on a Wednesday.
And it's also like I work in a services firm too, and it's also around setting scope as well. So, if you do have various layers of approval, what are they actually reviewing, right? So at
Yeah.
least not just you're not the same person reviewing everything up the chain, because that would just be duplication of activities, right? So that might be you might have to review the process as well, as Robert has mentioned. Around the empowered mindset, one person's asking around, we talk about certain things that you can do to, what keeps you ticking, what keeps you going, what drives your momentum throughout the day. Often I think this person's sort of reflecting on the fact that often it comes down to during the work day, it's pretty much just getting things done, right? And then outside of that, it's it's either you're during the work week you're at work, and then outside of work you are a different person, or you might still be thinking of work. How can you switch off after the day has finished, so that you're not sort of constantly checking in? So that way you then keep your mind empowered the following day. So you're not draining out pretty much. I think that's the thing. The questions coming has that sort of feel to it. What especially when you're running a business, you're always connected to your phone. You're always connected. You always, you mentioned a few tips around, using an alarm clock, so you're not checking your phone, all those bits and pieces. But I think practically most people struggle with that. So
I get it. Yeah.
so
It is hard. It is hard.
it's hard to sort of think about that, because then I think the person's asking a question with the fact that if you want to keep an empowered mindset for the rest of the week, because by the time you get to Friday, you're pretty much drained out, right? You just want the weekend to turn up, and then you have to prepare for the next week, right?
Yeah.
So what tips do you have to sort of make sure that people can turn off and then reset for the following day, so it doesn't become a drain by the end?
So here's the one that I have used, and works well for me. And I'm not saying this is easy, but here's a starting point, okay, is knowing, depending on what you do, but it's knowing when you finish. So if you finish work, I don't know what time it is, let's say it's 6 o'clock. It's knowing that at 6 o'clock you finish. Things are always going to come up in your mind. But I'm always of the habit of having a bit of paper and writing my thoughts on a bit of paper, and knowing that I've captured the thought. I've captured the thought, and I'm going to deal with that, because I know, for example, Thursday morning, the first half hour Thursday morning is reviewing what's on my to-do list and coming up with my priorities. So I can review the thoughts that I've captured, things that I need to do. Happens very rarely now, but I sleep with a piece of paper and pen beside my bed. So if something jumps into my mind, I'll just write it down and say, I've captured it now, I'll deal with it tomorrow. So I'm going to go with, in this case, it's capturing the information and knowing that I finish work at 6, capture the information and know that it's there for me to review tomorrow, would be the advice that I would give people there, because it can be tough. I mean, a business is our lifeline. That's what, we run a business. We want to be successful. It brings in remuneration. Our clients are important to us. We can't let anyone down. But I'll go back to, the most important person in your business is actually you. So if you don't stop and recharge and refocus, and the wheels fall off you, then it's all for nothing. So we need to find a way where we can switch off. Now, for me, the first thing I do in the morning, and I have done this, it's a habit. I'm going to say for 25 years, give or take, the first thing I do when I get out of bed every morning for 25 years is 45 minutes to an hour of exercise. It's usually a walk and exercise, or a swim and exercise, or something like that. I've done it forever. It's a habit. But that sets my day up. So I'm going to say that one of the things we need to be conscious of is, what clears your mind? Do you need to clear your mind at night? Do you need to clear your mind in the morning? How do you want to set yourself up? What are the things that you need to do? Because if you run yourself into the ground and your wheels fall off, you are no good to anyone. So we need to make some adjustments. I like the idea of capturing everything that comes up. Let me capture it, deal with it tomorrow. If it's more than that, if it's the phone rings, then it's just letting it go to voicemail. Oh, but it's really urgent. I know. But if you keep succumbing to the phone ringing, clients are not going to learn. If they learn that you leave a message and the message says, office is closed now, I will get back to you in a timely manner. If it's really urgent, send me a text. Maybe it's something like that. What are the measures you can start to put into place? Or I get lots of emails that I need to deal with. Oh, you don't actually have to deal with the emails. What are the things that what are the adjustments we can make? It's the small adjustments. Without knowing the specifics, I'm going to say capture. It's the small disciplines. It's the turning the phone off. It's not looking at Facebook. It's all those things to help empower yourself, so that you can be the best that you can be tomorrow, so that you can recharge your own battery, so you get the right amount of sleep, so that when you hit the ground in the morning and you look at your list and you come up with your 3 priorities and you manage your diary and you get them done, you're going to be more empowered to do that. And how do you recharge your battery? What are the things? If you need to stop for a moment and pause just to take a breath and get everything out of your mind and dump it on, I mentioned the butcher paper, or I mentioned the whiteboard, let's start with that. Let's capture it out of your head, capture it, deal with it tomorrow.
Yeah, I always plan the day for, plan the next day with a list in OneNote, Microsoft OneNote, sort of have my to-do list ready, so at least I don't have to start the day, start the next day thinking about now what was I supposed to do.
What was I supposed to do?
Helps
It's
it, makes it quick, right? And it just
what suits. It's different for everyone. Some people like to set up tomorrow tonight, and some people like to set up tomorrow morning. I'm going to say find what works best for you. Try tonight, try tomorrow. What works best for you? What are the small adjustments that you can make that are going to help? And you're not always going to get it right. It's not always going to work out for you, but what you're trying to do is take steps and make small adjustments. The 1%ers that cumulatively will make a difference. I don't know what your 1%ers are, but start with something.
Yeah. And we've got another question in the chat, which is around, I think this person runs their firm. And, from what I can read, they want to go on a holiday, the first holiday. They want to take a break. So what, I think they're now planning what they need to do to make sure the business continues on, so that they're not getting phone calls every day or urgent emails saying, how do we do that? So what are some of the top 3 tips, Robert, you can sort of share with that person that they can implement now as they lead up to the time that they're going to take leave, so that they put their business in a position that can continue to operate without it sort of falling off the rails?
It's a how long's a piece of string question, because the question I would ask is how long before you go on holidays. If it's at the end of the week, good luck. Okay. But let me give you an example. I had a client that I've been working with for a couple of years now. That was their goal, was for 2 particular staff members to be able to go on holidays because they hadn't had a holiday for so long. So we had to put measures in place. Now, in their case, one of the steps we took was we had to employ someone new, but that was part of the bigger picture. Okay. But we had 12 months to sort it out. Okay. So it's moving authority and responsibility with processes and systems so that people know what they could do and couldn't do. Okay. So without knowing how long it is before you have to go on holidays, I can't answer that fully, except you need to be prepared. You need to prepare. You need to prepare the people who are looking after things for you. What are the things that they need? What's the scope of their responsibility? What can they do and what can't they do? When do you expect that they can call you, and when do you not want them to call you? Okay. As a business owner, I know it's my baby. I'm not going to give it away. I'm not going to let it fall apart while I'm not there. So is there someone that can take the responsibility? Now, depending on the business, is there someone that can come in that can make those decisions on your behalf? I don't know. So preparation is the key here. Okay. I would go with preparation and put the pieces of the puzzle in place to say, okay, what's my biggest concern here? What's the things that could go wrong? And what responsibility and authorization can I give to anyone else, or do I not want to give to anyone else, so that they're clear on what they can do and what they can't do? If the business has great processes and systems in place and people who can take responsibility, then of course there's going to be less likely that they're going to be needed. Okay. Do you need to let clients know? I don't know the nature of the business, but you need to let your key clients know to say, I'm away for this period of time. I'll deal with it when I get back. But if you really need me, I'm going to be, 24-hour delay in being able to get back to you. So who do you need to word up about what might happen or what might not happen? So it's a difficult one without knowing preparation. Understand what people are capable of, what you're prepared for them to do and not do, and think about your clients at the same time.
But even having a conversation with your staff, right, about this is what's going to happen. What extra resources do you need from us?
All those things.
Yeah, it's just being transparent and having that 2-way discussion rather than
be open to people, with people. We are going away for this period of time. These are the things that are going to happen. This is not what's going to happen. You've got authority to do this. You haven't got authority to do that. What else do you need? Who else do we need? All those different things. Yeah, I agree.
Right. Yeah. Cool. And I think we've got one final question here. Yep. So just around habits and routines again. It is psychological, isn't it, really? To change habits and routines, it's not a day fix, right? And you talk about small steps to take. They I'm assuming from the way the question is drafted that this person has a workforce, has some staff that they have in the firm to help deliver the activities. What do you have you come across any platforms that that can subscribe to sort of help their staff think about these sorts of things? So we're talking a lot about, you know, I'm assuming most of your clients are sort of business owners that are coming to you to seek advice from coaching and mentoring. But what learning platforms or any sort of resources can the business owners share with their staff to help them with these sorts of things too? Are there any training platforms that you've come across, or do you even offer training sessions that you can share with staff? I think this person's more around how can they empower their staff to take on these tips.
Yeah, correct. And sometimes it's all those things you just mentioned. Yes, you can run training programs, you can recommend books. It depends on the nature of the business. It's also a little bit about, part of that is also about setting standards within the organization. Clear standards about this is what we do here and why. Is that something that the business needs to work on? If there are standards, what are the things that you can put in place that helps people achieve those standards? And how often do you catch up with your staff to have a review or an assessment of what they're doing and make some adjustments and make some suggestion about adjustments that they can make? So there's seminars, there's books, there's training, there's one-on-one. There's probably lots of different things without knowing the number of staff and the people. I'm going to go with standards on this one. Have you got clear enough standards that you want them to work by? At this organization, we expect, here are the this is what we expect. We expect you to be 5 minutes early, not 2 minutes late, as an example. If we say something is going to be delivered at a certain time, we do that. And if we can't achieve it, we're going to let the client know why. It's a standard that we want to set. It's open communication. What are the not negotiables that you want in your business? So once again, without knowing the full extent of what they're doing, yes, you can train individuals. Some individuals may not be trainable. They may not be the type of people that can do what you ask them to do. So then it goes back to, what are you hiring? How are you hiring people? I reckon you've got to hire people that you can train them. You can provide training on what you want them to do, but you want them to bring to the table when they come to you. You want them to be organized people, for example. You don't want to employ someone who is disorganized and go, I can change them, because my experience is highly unlikely that you're going to be able to change those habits in them. Okay. Now, if they're working on them and they need some refinements, that's different. But if they're always late and always messy and always disorganized, you employ people, you want them to have those things so that they can focus on the work you want them to do. So potentially hire better could be part of the answer in this example as well. Don't hire people that don't fit what you want. Yes, we all need some tinkering around the edges. I get that. But we just want to tinker around the edges. We don't want to renovate the bathroom at the same time.
Yeah, no, it's very, very prudent. I think, there's probation periods, there's various sort of things you can do during the hiring process to make sure you've made the right decision. And it needs to be a win-win for both sides as well. And if they're not up to it and you feel that they need a lot of improvement, then it might not be the best approach to take on them or continue with their employment.
Hire right is really important. One of the biggest lessons I learned in hiring many, many years ago is, don't settle for the best of a bad bunch. When you're hiring staff, hire the best person you can. If you have to go back to the well, do that. Fill the job for what the job is and what you need. Don't hope that this person's going to grow into it, because more often than not, my experience is you'll be disappointed. Not always, but more often than not.
And I assume for those that are hiring, that are in positions where they can hire staff, it's not an easy market as well. I know there's a lot of movement happening in the market, but these are the things that you have to work through, and there are a lot of tools and resources out there to help you choose the right person for the role and for your business and for the team. It needs to be a good fit on all fronts.
For the business you're looking to hire someone to help the business move forward.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes you have to take a step sideways to move forward. I get that, but you don't want to take 2 steps back in the process.
Yeah. Great. Well, those have been excellent tips, and of course, there's only a handful of tips. There's so many other tips that Robert can share with you too. So here are his details. If you ever want to talk to him or engage him for his services, they're his contact details are on screen. So thank you again, Robert, for presenting that seminar.
My pleasure. Hopefully people found it informative.
So that brings us to the end of the session. So just as a reminder, the session is being recorded as we speak, and following the session, we'll post it directly to YouTube so you can have a look at it again or share it with family and friends. The one-page handout will be sent through to all registered participants, so you have something on hand to refer to, which addresses all the tips that Robert has shared. The next session will be held on I think it is the 16th of August. It's a Wednesday. The next one's on the 26th of July. Sorry, there's one in between. The next one's a week from today. So 26th of July is our next one, which will be on family law matters in relation to divorces and migration issues. So we have two lawyers who will be talking about those matters. So if you want to join, please do register for that session. Our social media channels are Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and also sort of considering TikTok now. So we're trying to get through to the masses. So if you do want to find out more about Be Informed, please do search for Be Informed through those channels, and you can learn more about the platform and what we offer. So that brings us to a formal close for today's session. I hope you found that enjoyable and have learned something from it. And as Robert has said, even if you take away one tip and implement something tomorrow, that is a great start. So that's about it for today. Thank you, Robert, again, and wishing everyone a good night.
Thank you.
See ya.